I'm Sharon Bass, and I'm so excited to welcome you. The Volunteer Center exists to inspire people to get involved by finding their purpose and acting on it. We think of ourselves as do-good gatherers. Our Conversations for Good series is one of the ways we do that. We loved meeting together the past year, having creative virtual gathering for good moments. Thank you for continuing to be here. We are so grateful. We're excited to have this opportunity to talk and reflect together. Today, we brought back Dr. Kitty Harris for another round of Coming Up for Air. As we consider the topic for today, we kept coming back to how it feels to come through or still be coming through what we've all experienced in the past nearly now 2 years. We did some exploring last summer about what it feels like to be finally coming up for air, but here we still are. I'm excited to have back our friend Kitty Harris to continue the conversation. She's a professor emeritus at Texas Tech University. She now serves as executive partner for collegiate recovery with Summit BHC, a network of leading behavioral health centers throughout the United States. She also serves as president of the Foundation for Recovery Initiatives, which is dedicated to consulting, education, science, and research for addiction recovery. She's an author, an advocate, a noted public speaker, and a national presenter. We are so fortunate to have her joining us today. I can't think of anybody I get more excited to spend time with than Kitty, especially as we think how we move through this. So welcome, Kitty. How are you?
I am good, Sharon. Thank you. Thank you for that gracious introduction. And one thing you should have added to that bio is one of your friends, which is why I'm here.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that. It's a gift. It's a gift. It's how a lot of us are getting through this time, right? With our friends and having a friend network.
I know it. You know, one of the things that I realized, I went to a luncheon last week, and it was I had to give a short presentation, and it was large. It was at the Civic Center, and when I walked in, it felt a little bit scary and overwhelming, because although I've done that a million times, I haven't done it in 2 years. And I realized preparing for that I had not been on a stage with a microphone in front of a group of people in 2 years.
Wow.
And I'm not ashamed to admit it made me a little bit nervous. And the realization came that, oh my gosh, what you would have never really thought much about because of the situation that we've been in for 2 years is now, changed the way you look at some of the things you've done, really pretty effortlessly. The other good thing, though, is that I cannot tell you how wonderful it was to hug people and see people and recreate some of those connections that haven't been made for 2 years, because nobody's been available to really be out and do much. So it's more than just a conceptual experience. I think last week made it a very real experience for me to realize what a change our lives have taken.
Right. Well, and for me, I join you in that, except that I've been very hesitant about being in a big group of people like that. And I was very up and down about deciding whether to be there or not be there to cheer on from afar. And so I think that we're just kind of off, or I am all the time. I know that a lot of people are just like, they're full on, they're going right on with their lives. And it's, they're going right on with their lives. And I'm glad they, that they get that choice. But there's just such a spectrum of how everybody is being physically and in this time that I think impacts and takes so much energy to just show up every day and do what you do in the world. I came across this thing, and you may have seen it. There've been a couple different things on Facebook, little things, and one was a pie chart that was the year, and it had January. About 2/3 of the year was January, and then all the other months were, sort of sandwiched in there. Because it just felt like January has gone on forever. It's like, when are we? And it's because of just so much changing and uncertainty.
Yes.
So when we talked last summer, on our first coming up for air, we spent some time talking about resilience and the resilience of being actually a skill set that we could work on. Have you learned some new things about resilience, or has what you knew about resilience been even more deeply set in place in the last months?
That's a great question. I actually am happy to say I've learned more about it. We talked a lot about some of the basic things that we've seen from research, that one of the most important things was social support, which is what the pandemic has basically robbed us of. We talked about having organization called structured style in your life, and knowing how you're going to do stuff and when you're going to do it, and the importance of family relationships and stuff. But I have learned some more. And some of the things that I've worked on and talked to people about and looked at were things that were interesting in terms of characteristics of people that have a tendency to be resilient. And I was able to do some work on that, and really with a group out of Fort Worth, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that was interesting to me, that some of the characteristics of people that really demonstrate resilience or show that they have some are things like joy. How joyous are you? Do you have an attitude of being happy, of feeling good, of experiencing that? One of the other ones that I thought was interesting was a sense of loyalty, not only to people, but to projects. And when I thought about it, that made sense too, is that so often, if we can be loyal, if we can be committed to things, that gives us a reason to continue to kind of bounce back. And I thought that was kind of fascinating. It was a little bit different from some of the other things that I've read. And one last thing I'll mention that is I have to tell you, and this won't surprise you, Sharon, this is my favorite, is that, and there's research now that shows this and proves that it's not just speculation or, but gratitude. Having a sense of gratitude allows you to build resilience and to be resilient and to bounce back and to come up for air. And it makes so much sense if you think about it. If I'm really grateful for the things I have in my life, and I'm grateful for the opportunities I have, it gives me a reason to show up again. It gives me a reason to come back and want to do something else. And I think that what the research has shown is that a real sense of gratitude in our lives, even during this hard time, has made for the opportunity for us to be resilient and to have a mood that allows us to survive some of the rough stuff. So those are some of the the things I've learned since our last, I think there's some more, but I'll leave it at 3 for right now.
That is very, very interesting. That is very interesting. Because I don't think most of us think about joy in the middle of this. It's not like, in the before times, it felt like to me, joy just fell out of the sky for me on a daily basis. Something happened that you're just like, I can't believe I got to do this. I can't believe where you're just like, it just happened. And so I guess right now I'm just this red hot second wondering, does that stuff, is it not happening? Because that's probably not true. That's all probably still happening. We're just, a lot of us so beaten down and full of what we're all full of, that there's no space to welcome joy. And so I love that. I love that. I love that.
And I would add one thing to your thought about that I think for some of us, it's finding joy in things that we might have taken for granted before. Like I will tell you, this is kind of silly, but so my house backs up to a playa lake, which now has 1 million geese there, and 1,000 is not an exaggeration. But there's also a set of ducks and geese that live there year round. Some of the geese have broken wings, and so they're there permanently. Well, I cannot tell you the joy I have every day when I drive home to go feed them corn. And before, I never really thought about it much. And, I did it if I was, if I could, or if I was there, or if I thought about it. And now it has become a source of joy in my life because of the connection with these living animals.
Right.
And so when I was so busy before doing all the things, we were doing before the pandemic, I didn't really find joy in some of the things that I find joy in today, because some of the other things have become limited.
Right. So it's really a great opportunity for us to expand, not only to get through the day, but to really expand our capacity and our ability to be in the world and really to experience the world fully in the ways that we can control, because we feel so out of control with all of this. And there are some real tangible things that we can control. You're going and feeding the ducks. You can do that. And the gratitude thing, it takes some intention to decide, to choose to be grateful, because I think we can always find things to be grateful for. And, and we make it so hard, but for me, I have to just kind of pull myself out of whatever it is, the abyss that I've let myself black hole fall into, and be like, okay, I got a choice here. I can do something different than what I'm doing or thinking or feeling. So.
Right. I think one thing that I've learned again recently, I will have to say, is as difficult as all the last 2 years have been, in some respects, they've been a real opportunity to learn new things about stuff. And I've always, for years and years, made a gratitude list every morning, the things I was grateful for. That's just been one of my daily devotional things I've done forever. And I always think about, I'm grateful for this activity or this happening or this or that or whatever. And what I've learned during the pandemic, just as it is kind of with the ducks, my first thing on my gratitude list is I'm grateful I woke up this morning. I'm grateful I'm alive. I'm grateful I have another day to spend on the earth. I'm grateful, and I think part of what the pandemic has done potentially for us is allow us to get back to center, almost to get back to that point where some of the smaller things that we took for granted in the midst of all that we get involved in the midst of all that we're a part of, that we're able to I kind of hate to use this word, but almost downsize to things that we take for granted, that we shouldn't. I am grateful the sun's shining today. I'm grateful that I woke. I'm grateful I made it to be on your Zoom on time. I mean, that sense of gratitude, sometimes I think we make it a large, it has to be something overwhelming or large. And I'm not so sure that during this pandemic, we've had an opportunity to think about it in terms of being more realistic, more down to earth. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I've learned for myself that, I'm grateful for the day I have today.
Well, and that makes me think that you're starting to touch on what I guess I'd say about attitude. It's like your attitude and your approach of what you're choosing to do. And I came across a thing last week that's this great little graphic that Austin Kleon has put up for us that maybe we can show it. It says you cannot look into the pit all day. It'll hypnotize you and you'll fall in. And I just loved that because I was like, it feels like there is a pit or that we're in the pit all the time. And some of it is just not allowing ourselves to get hypnotized by it. And that's our choice. We get to pick that. So I loved that. But I also, it makes me go down the road some on our attitude in the midst of that, and what you choose. Are you bitter about it? Are we so weary and exhausted that we're just tired and grumpy and don't want to be around anyone? You talk to a lot of people. You get to visit with a lot of people. Where are we with all of that? And how do we navigate through that? If we want to be positive and, kind of make some choices in that direction of how we look at it, how influenced are we going to be or allow ourselves to be about the people that we're around and what their attitude is about stuff and their spirit? But that's a whole lot of just sort of stream of consciousness. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, yes. And that's a great stream of consciousness. And think that am I an optimistic person? Am I a joyful person? Am I a grateful person? What's my attitude toward life? And I think every one of us, I can name people in my life that I know that are joyful and that are optimistic and that have a good attitude. And because of that, I love being around them. They're uplifting. they're easy, if you know what I mean. They're just easy to be around. And then I can think of people that aren't optimistic, that are negative, that are, the sky's falling. The next thing that's going to happen is going to be a bad thing. And one of the I think important things is to look at, first of all, yourself. How do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as having a good attitude toward life? Do you see yourself as having, have you been able to maintain a positive attitude through the pandemic? And I think some of us have struggled with that. I think some of us have kind of made peace with it. I go back to all of the struggle with people initially wearing masks, like, I'm not going to do that, or I can't, and how that affected, people's attitude and interaction. But I think that the people that we most choose to be around are people that are positive, are optimistic, are look on the bright side. Think about the good that can come of this and that. And it's been hard to do the last 2 years. It's been hard to have that. Even those people that are generally optimistic and happy and positive, it's just like kind of, everything's, when we spoke in the summer, things were starting to look better and we were doing this and that. And then we got hit with the next Omicron variant. It was like, oh my gosh, here we go, And so throughout life experiences, the ability to hold on to optimism and hold on to positive attitudes, I think, becomes one of our challenges. And it's I think, but honestly, Sharon and I there's some studies done on genetics and environment in terms of optimism, and most of them are inconclusive about what really helps people be that way. I think that most of us, not all of us, but most of us, prefer optimism and positive attitudes than negativity.
Yeah. I sure do. I have to work on it, but I do work on it. Last week, Haley on our team and I had the opportunity to speak to a group of educators about leadership in this time. And, we got a lot of stuff here that we do, but I thought, I feel like we need something that's a kind of an added twist. This is different. It's a different kind of time trying to be a leader in the midst of all of this. So we talked about some of this. We talked about, our attitude and how you choose to show up and da-da-da-da. And always at the end of these kind of things, we ask for people's feedback on a written survey to give us feedback. And we got lots of, glowing things that, how helpful it was and blah, 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 which was all great. But one of the things that we ask is, what did you like? What was most helpful and what was least helpful? And one of the folks put, honestly, your toxic positivity was least helpful. And I thought, that's really interesting that all the care that we thought we took to show up in an encouraging, appreciative, full of, la, 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 all that kind of way was, and was received by a lot of people. At least one of them, honestly, it wasn't helpful to them at all.
Wow.
And in fact, it was not, it was toxic to them. And so I've been thinking about that, I want to be responsive in the world. I want to be myself. I want to be authentic. But I think it's good for me to realize that not everybody, in spite of our best efforts, can receive that or is in a place to receive that. That's okay. I mean, that's where I landed. Do you think I've rationalized it, Kitty, to put a positive spin on something that wasn't positive?
No, I love that. I think that there are people, excuse me, there are people that are just naturally pessimistic, and they don't really want to see the positive. And they don't really, I mean, I think that oftentimes people that are more pessimistic see those people that are more optimistic as Pollyannas. If you remember the old, you're just a Pollyanna, everything, excuse me, you see is just, Pollyanna. And I think that people that are more pessimistic see themselves as more realist. Like, if you look at the world, you will find we have all these struggles and we have all these, there are people that go hungry every day. There are people that don't have access to shelter I mean, all of that's true. I mean, we can all make a case for being pessimistic. I mean, I can sit here right now and quote statistics to you on different mental health issues that would make you go, oh my gosh, Kitty, the world is in trouble. However, what I would prefer to do is to tell you all the things that are being done to help our mental health right now, Right. And so it really, it's like that, what was that Robert Frost poem, two roads diverged in the woods and I took the one less traveled, I think. And I think for many people, we have the choice of optimism or the choice of pessimism, and that whether, and again, there's a little bit of conflict in the science, whether our brain is what chooses that, our genes, or the way we've grown up. This is the way you prefer to look at things. And I know, I mean, I am one of the worst. I am just can be one of the worst Pollyanna people. And part of that's because, very truthfully, that's how I would prefer to see the world. That's how I want to live. I realize that there's a lot of things that aren't okay. And there's a lot of things we struggle with. And there's a lot of things that, make me sad and, depressed. But I would prefer to live on the other side of the fence. And one reason is this. It's been shown that pessimism breeds anxiety. And so people that have a tendency to be really pessimistic as opposed to optimistic oftentimes have more anxiety about their life or the world or whatever. And I would prefer to not have anxiety. Anxiety is not my friend. And so if I can help myself by being more optimistic and dealing with, anxiety that way, then that would be my choice.
Interesting. That's an interesting connection. It makes sense. I just haven't thought about those two.
Yeah.
Being together. Again, choosing. It's not just something you landed in the abyss or the black hole. You can pull yourself out. It's possible. It's possible with this attitude thing. Interesting. I think one of the things that has happened for me, and I don't think I'm 100% on this on a daily basis, but I think this thing that we've gone through the last couple of years has made me more aware of how everybody shows up in a different way to this kind of situation, these kinds of challenges that we've been through. And that everybody ought to have the space to be themselves in the middle of it, however they are. And and accepting that and trying not to be judging about that, or fixing about that. I'm a fixer, I'm like, oh, just pull yourself out, but people need I think the space to sort through, as well as the resources to be able to do that. But I don't know. I guess that's just, as I've thought about, well, how am I myself, and how do I show up being compassionate for myself and for other people? It's like, well, one thing we could do is to be less judging about I don't know.
Yeah, and I lost you for a second there, had a little screen freeze, but I think I got where you're going about the judging and the judgmental part. And I think that's a really good point. What I really, really like is what you said too, is the realization that everyone shows up differently. And I think I hadn't thought about that way, but you're so right that there are people that I can think about through these last 2 years that have dealt with life this way. And there are people that have dealt with it that way. And there are people that have dealt with it that way. And and I can think about different family members, friends, work associates that have dealt with everything, very differently. And I think one of the important things that you're looking at is that sense of not judging how people have chosen to show up, and I think it's hard. Like there were a lot of things that I didn't do for a while. I mean, I didn't get out much. I didn't go anywhere much. We ordered our groceries online, all those kinds of things. And I think a lot of people made decisions like that. And then I think a lot of people said, well, I'm not changing the way I do life. I'm going to go do whatever I want to do, and more of maybe a rugged, experience. I'm out there. I think a lot of people retreated completely due to health reasons, due to age, oftentimes, fear of being sick, fear of, that kind of stuff. And I think maybe one of the big takeaways from all of that is the realization that all of us are made up so differently. Our personalities, our views of life, our attitudes about pandemics. I mean, what is our attitude about having something threaten our country? What does that look like? And so in many ways, I think we learn a lot about who we are. We learned a lot about who the people that we are around are. And maybe one of the most important things is what you said, with a little bit of a different slant, is I noticed who showed up. I noticed the people that showed up to help. I noticed the people that showed up to try to help keep our local establishments going. I noticed the people that showed up to try to keep, our houses of worship still open. I noticed the people that showed up on the last webinar that we did to try to still stay active and involved. And I think that was one of the things that I've been really touched by, is that there has, as different as we all are and as different as we've all responded, that there has been a real sense of showing up to keep our community, as healthy as possible.
Right.
in our establishments as healthy as possible. And I find that very touchy and exciting.
I do too, Kitty. I do too. And even though it's been in some different ways than we have ever, experienced before, but it goes back to what we were talking about early on in the last time we talked, the importance of relationships and
Yes.
nurturing those relationships in the people that are close to you, to the people that you encounter that they might not be your best friend, but they're I was saying earlier this morning to one of my colleagues here how much I love the kids at Starbucks at the window, because they have a drive-through. There's a drive-through, and the spirit and they're my friends. I don't know, they're not, but it's that relationship that I think we've expanded in some ways. It's important. It's important. Well,
And can I just, I don't want to interrupt. Let me just pick back on that for 1 minute. Is that I am with you on that. And I love the kids at Starbucks. I love the interaction. At some point, it was the most interaction we had, a lot of times. And that willingness to be pleasant and happy and engaging and whatever, and if that's where your relationships come from, during a pandemic, then so be it.
Right.
What a blessing it has been.
Right. Yeah. And I'm all about local stuff. And that's part of what Taylor and I were talking about. It's like, I love all of our local places, but during the pandemic, they didn't have drive-up windows. And so I got to be, these people got to be my friends over the last couple of years, because that was an easy, safe way to get my good.
Yeah.
So cheers on that. Well, so one of the things that has happened at the Volunteer Center, starting out and ending the year, is that we look at all of our data and the things that we measure and our metrics and all that kind of stuff. And to your point of, having people wanting to reach out, people wanting to have those relationships, we have seen that big time at the Volunteer Center. And during 2020, when we added everything up in terms of the number of folks that we impacted, that we touched in the ways that we did it here, it was over 50,000 people. That was in 2020. Wow. During the pandemic year. And I kept doing it over and over again, because I was like, can this be right when we changed everything, that we had that many people? Well, it was that people were looking for something to do that helped. And,
right.
and they came to us for that. In 2021, things kept changing. Things were back, things were not back, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wonder how this is going to look. I think we're going to, we'll be fortunate if we just stay even over the year. Well, it's over 60,000 people last year.
Wow.
Then more people, and there were more opportunities. I think there have become more opportunities for people to do things virtually. The capacity of our organizations has grown in that we connect to, and people are being able to get out and volunteer and do stuff. But it blows me away that in a community of our size, that there are that many people that are showing up and choosing to show up and looking for ways that they can authentically be themselves in the world. And it's, it makes you want to just, jump for joy, joy, your original, thing we started talking about. But Yeah, it's amazing to me.
I know, and I compliment you for what you've been able to put together to allow that to happen. And I think another part of it that fits in with so much of what we've talked about in the summer and what we've talked about today and what I hope we'll talk about in the future is that one of the absolute human needs is to have purpose. We all have a need to have purpose, whether it's feeding the ducks in the afternoon, you know, whether it is driving through Starbucks and being able to connect with kids that are there to work, whatever it is. And I think part of what the Volunteer Center does that is so innately important to our culture and our community is that it allows people a place to experience purpose. And that is a huge blessing, Sharon. That is at the core. You know, when we talk about, you know, core parts of our lives and experiences, to be able to feel like you're a person of purpose, that there's a reason for you to get up in the morning. There's a reason for you to get dressed. There's a reason for you to get out and show up in the world. The key piece of that is that sense of having purpose. And that's what you do. I mean, and that's why your numbers are really huge in a pandemic, because part of what was taken from us were our kind of normal senses of purpose at times, you know.
Interesting. Well, thanks for that, because we do think intrinsically that the reason we exist is to help people find their purpose and act on it. And we say that, and we try to provide programming around that. And lately I've been reading some things that are more business oriented publications that are saying, you know, if you want to keep your employees, if you want to, in the midst of all these folks resigning and moving on, you know, one of the strategies to keep them is to help them figure out what their purpose is and how that aligns with your business's purpose. I was like, wow, that's what we're about. And it's made me think more about, I know some ways to help people find their purpose. I know that volunteering and helping them find a good volunteer fit, or helping them find a board that they can feel connected to. I mean, I know those are some things about purpose that work for people. But what is there more than that? And how do you really, if somebody doesn't feel like they know what their purpose is, how do we help people get in touch with that? And it's a longer conversation than we probably have time to really dive in on, but you know, it is just so essential, I think, to our well-being in the world to have a sense of that and to be able to express, because God made us all to be all in, show up no matter the circumstance. We've gotten a lot of practice on it, but it gets
Well,
me up.
I mean, that could be a huge discussion that would be fun to have. I will tell you just a short response to that. How do you?
I can't wait.
How do you do that? I think part of it, I think it's multifaceted, but I think part of it is that sense of what gives you a sense of value. You know, having value contributes to purpose. If I feel like, if I feel like that I'm of value to you right now with your organization, what you want to do, that value contributes to my sense of purpose today. There was a reason I was here and did this today. So one of the first things to look at is value. What gives you a sense of value? What makes you feel like it mattered? You know, that you brought value to the table, you brought value to the discussion, you brought value to the experience. So that's one thing that helps contribute to purpose. I think another thing that's a little bit more, it's a little more difficult to talk about, is what allows you to have a sense of competence. It's like, if I feel like I can give something that matters, that I'm competent with information you might be looking for, then that contributes to my sense of purpose. That I bring something to the table. I have a competence to contribute. And whether it's I've got a car to drive someone to the grocery store, or that competence is I'm able to arrange flowers to take to someone in the hospital that will make them happy. The competence doesn't have to be an academic kind of thing, or it doesn't have to be, it is just, there are people, that I know that are fabulous cooks. That is not me. Do not ask me to cook something and take to a friend that is sick. That is not my competence. I'm happy to go to Market Street and pick something up, but I'm not going to make it. Well, there are people that would spend all day, because they're so competent in the kitchen, they can come up with something of value that allows them to feel a sense of purpose in giving to someone. And so I think part of what it is for us is looking at what are our competencies, and you do that with your center. You look at what are the people competent in that you can utilize and that you can match up. And then that competence helps you feel a sense of value. And those two things contribute to your feeling of purpose. And that's a short version of a bunch of things.
I love that. Because I think sometimes when you talk about these big things like, purpose, it's like, it's going to just come out of the sky and it's going to just descend on me and there it's going to, versus it's a path. Right. I mean, it's looking at what you're good at with this, and what brings value to you, to the people that you're around. And we get to practice. We don't have to be perfect on it on day one. It's a path, and it's always growing and evolving if we're cleared out enough to let it. Well, think about today. That's a lot of good stuff to think about. I love this conversation. And I guess the challenge is that we're running out of time, because I could go on for I could keep going on this, but your time is valuable, and our folks that are with us, their time is valuable. The great news is that Kitty has agreed to do these conversations with us throughout 2022. So we're going to have it be with you today, but we're going to be back in probably late May and early September and early December. And we're going to keep talking about coming up for air, because it feels like that's going to be a good topic for whatever situation that we're in throughout the year. So our big thanks to Kitty for offering her wisdom and her perspective for us today. We'd love to hear your questions for future visits. You can email us, you can call us. We've got a new website at volunteerlubbock.org. You may be seeing this on Zoom the first day we launch it, or you may be seeing on YouTube or Facebook or some other place. But let us know questions and follow up, and anything that you'd like to have us talk about in the future. And in the meantime, let us know how we can help you at the Volunteer Center. As I say, we exist to serve you and to help you figure out what your purpose is and how to act on it. Please take good care of you and know that we're all in this together, and know that we're sending love to you for this day and every day. Thank you so much for being with us. Thanks to you too.